Hello, Mr. Westmoreland-EL. How are you today?
I'm doing great, Dr. Baker. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to go right to the subject, which is our interview. I know this is going to be very enlightening. Who are some of the people that inspired you as a poet?
I was inspired by the poetry of Marcus Garvey, the poetry of Paul Laurence Dunbar, and Claude McKay. I was also inspired by the writings of Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Tell me something about your background as a poet. How long have you been writing?
I began writing when I was 15 years young. However, I was 18 years young when I began writing seriously. I'm 39 years young now, so it has been 23 years since I've been writing seriously. I can recall when I was about 19 years young, my grandmother said to me, "Your mother was a writer, and I was a writer, but you exceed all of us." Before I forget, I must mention that I won a countywide poetry contest in Savannah, Georgia, and my work was enlarged and posted up in the school's lobby for all to see, in large orange lettering. I was about 18 years young at the time this occurred. I was 22 years young when my work was recognized at the Joseph Caleb Center here in Miami. There I won first place in my division in a poetry contest. This is during the time when I met my outstanding editor, Miss Gigi Tinsley. I also used to teach children creative writing at the North Miami Beach Library as part of an after-school program in the early 1990s. I also taught creative writing and what I coined arithmetic reading and projection for children at the African Heritage Cultural Arts Center around the year 2005. So Dr. Baker, as I look back, I have very cherished moments to be proud of. I don't know what I would become as a writer, but I'm proud of what I have been thus far in my life, thanks to our Creator.
I see you use the term more to a great extent in your writings. What does it mean, and what is the significance of us using this term in application to ourselves?
I would like to use a quote by one of my most favorite historians, Mr. John G. Jackson, in his famed work entitled Introduction to African Civilization, page 189. The word Moor literally means black, so the Moorish people were the black people. He went on to say, a little further in his writings, in medieval times, the name of Moor was not restricted to the inhabitants of Morocco, but it was customary to refer to all Africans as Moors. Note he stated that during this time, all Africans were identified as Moors. When the Guyanese historian Jan Carew identified with the Moors in his great work, Fulcrums of Change, he mentions that the first Africans that came to America were Moors, a fact he mentioned that should hardly surprise us since the Moors had conquered and ruled Spain for 7 centuries. In Granada, the last Moorish stronghold only fell on January 2nd, 1492, 8 months before Columbus set sail for the New World. However, the term Moor for Africans exceeded the medieval era. Consider the Treaty of 1786 and the Treaty of 1836 of Morocco with America, which followed 50 years later. The term Moor is used on them both. The significance here is that Article 6, Paragraph 2 of the United States Constitution enumerates all treaties made, or which shall be made, under the authority of the United States, shall be the supreme law of the land. This establishes the term Moor for the people of the African extraction in America as a lawful identity. So, Dr. Baker, the significance of us using the term Moor in application to ourselves is that in doing such, we could now say that we have an identity that is historically and lawfully supported. For without an identity or nationality, you have no political status. Also, you have no belonging to a nation. For a flag in legal parlance is defined as a symbol of a nationality. In addition, pursuant to the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights, namely Article 15, everyone has a right to a nationality. So we are descendants of not slaves, but of Moroccans who inhabited these shores prior to slavery. Thus, by nationality, we're Moorish Americans. Due to what is called invidious discrimination, or the deprivation of the pursuit of happiness, we have been classed as Negroes, blacks, coloreds, and African Americans. In general conversation, to speak of ourselves using these designations wouldn't be a problem, but in a more substantial sense, in a more legal sense, it definitely would be. For they all lack a national appellation, and they rob us of a legal identity. So though being a little wordy in my response, I hope I've satisfactorily answered your question.
What do you say about the long-standing claim of some who are of the postulate that the United States Constitution made us 3/5 of a human being.
Dr. Baker, our founder of the Moorish Divine and National Movement, Noble Drew Ali, stated in his famed warning speech, "Those who doubt whether I and my principles are right for the redemption of my people, go to those who know the law." So in keeping with his instructions, I'd like to answer your question by turning your attention to Mr. Robert Goldwin. Mr. Goldwin is a resident scholar of constitutional studies at the American Enterprise Institute for Public Policy Research in Washington, D.C. Mr. Goldwin is also the author of the book Why Blacks, Women, and Jews Are Not Mentioned in the Constitution and Other Unorthodox Views. So needless to say, he knows and understands law quite well. In the aforementioned book, Mr. Goldwin on page 13 states, "The 3/5 clause had nothing to do with the humanity or inhumanity of blacks." He said the humanity of blacks was not the subject of the 3/5 clause. Voting power in Congress was the subject. I would strongly recommend this book to you and those who demand more elaboration and detail where this question is concerned, for time doesn't permit me, unfortunately, to elaborate and go into further detail.
Tell me a little about the movement of which you are a part and its founder.
The movement to which I adhere is essentially divine and national. The movement is known by its most popular branch, the Moorish Science Temple of America. The founder of the movement is Noble Drew Ali, who was born January 8, 1886 in Cherokee, North Carolina. Noble Drew Ali began the Moorish movement in 1913 in Newark, New Jersey. He was said to have had between 10 to 30,000 adherents in 1928, the year before he departed. In essence, he taught Moorish is the people, science is the education, and temple was the place of education. He taught most significantly, come and learn the truth about your nationality and birthrights, for we are not blacks, Negroes, colored people, or Ethiopians. He would also be found stating in his literature, come and link yourselves with the families of nations. He taught us that we are descendants of Moroccans that inhabited these shores prior to the slave era, and thus we're by nationality Moorish Americans. In addition, he assigned the red Moroccan flag to us as a link with our newfound nationality, or to the national families of the earth. Noble Drew Ali didn't state to us that there were many issues with which we must be concerned about, but only one. Such was for us to be recognized by this government and of the earth. And that comes only through the connection, he said, of the Moorish Divine and National Movement, which is incorporated in this government and recognized by all of the nations of the earth. In my conclusion, I would like to use another quote from Noble Drew Ali that I think is ideal where understanding his posture is concerned. I'm going to keep the Europeans in power just long enough to teach you how to run a government. You see, the principal posture of Noble Drew Ali was for his people to evolve from possessing no identity, thus receiving not any recognition from this government and the nations of the earth, recognition that is as a nation of people or being Moorish American nationals, also for us to evolve from being victims of fictitious laws deriving from the de facto federal government, a government that converts our rights into privileges and thus taxes us where we have freedoms and immunities safeguarded by the United States Constitution. Indicative to the aforementioned quote that I bore, Noble Drew Ali wanted us to evolve from being under the control and subjection of the de facto federal government to exercising what is our most significant right, which is self-government.
Where did the term Moor and the Moors as a people originate?
In the book, 100 Amazing Facts About the Negro with Complete Proof, Joel A. Rogers stated on page 22, the most ancient names for so-called black people are Nehesu, Nubian, Ethiopian, and Moor from ancient Egypt. Also in the book Stolen Legacy on page 40, George G. M. James makes a correlative statement likened to Mr. Rogers. The Moors kept up constant contact with Mother Egypt, for they had established caliphates not only at Baghdad and Cordova, but also at Cairo in Egypt. So the correlation is vivid, for Mr. James stated that the Moors kept up constant contact with Mother Egypt, for if someone is your mother, a fortiori you came from her. Also in Suzan's book entitled Babil's Power Generators on page 40, she discloses that the Moorish titles El and Ali are both of Camite or of ancient Egyptian origin.